Harry, today's topic is tithing. What is it and how does it apply in the Bible?
Yeah, well, it started actually at the time of Moses. Okay, so it wasn't there before that at all. The only time before that was Abram gave 10% of the Sodom and Gomorrah thing to Melchizedek.
Mm,
And that's the only time we run across it before the time of Moses. Well, during Moses' tenure, when the people were in the wilderness, the Levites were ordained to be, they're one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and they were ordained to be the God people for the rest of the people. So that involved doing offerings and write scribe work, writing, and all the things that, yeah, they were the what you call the legal people, the religious people, all this kind of stuff, but they needed to be paid for it. So one of the 12 tribes, so 10% was was set aside so these folks could have a living and do all the stuff that needed doing for the service of God.
yeah, because they were
So,
committing themselves to an
yeah.
aspect of serving God, right? And they obviously needed to be fed and taken care of, etc.
So when Israel was established, each tribe had their area, but the Levites were throughout the whole area. So they didn't have a location of their own, didn't have farms of their own, didn't have blacksmiths of their own. They just depended on everybody else because they were doing the God thing. So that's the background, and that was the Old Testament, and that started the time of Moses, and that carried through till Jesus' time. In the New Testament, Jesus doesn't mention it at all as a teaching or anything like that. Um, the apostles, when he sent them out, he specifically says, no, he says, you don't take any money, you just depend on other people's charity, and that's the way it is. Then afterwards, well, it also says Luke 8:3 says these women were helping to support them out of their own means. And these were women that Jesus had healed of demons and other things. And some of them were well-to-do, and they provided for food and stuff for the disciples and Jesus and so on. And Luke 18:22, we have the rich young ruler, and he says, what must I do? And Jesus said, well, he says, they talked about the commandments and so on. And then he he says, one thing you lack, he says, sell everything you have and give to the poor.
That's a big lack, eh? Don't sell everything you have and give to the poor.
Yeah, well, there was a reason for it. Okay, Jesus saved the good thing for the last. This guy, and he walked away sad because he was rich, and the money owned him. Okay, he had
Mm,
another god, and Jesus was pointing that out. So he wasn't. So he said, but Jesus didn't say, "Sell everything you have and bring the money to me."
no,
Uh,
he
no,
said, "Come
Jesus.
follow me," right?
And then he says, come follow me. So he says, get rid of your money, give it to the poor, and I want you. I don't want your money. And
Wow.
that's really what Jesus says to all of us is, I want you. And so I've actually heard a radio pastor use that story and doing it, saying that send your money to me and I'll take care. But anyways, that's a separate topic. So why did Jesus not teach supporting the church? He says, freely you have received and freely give. But all Christians were one family. They fed and helped each other. And there were no buildings
There
or
was a big community, right?
yeah, the
Exactly.
community.
But when
Yeah,
did
and
it change from the community aspect over to the building what we see in today's
yeah,
society?
when Constantine came along in the year 325 approximately, he legalized Christianity, and at that time they went nuts building churches and all this kind of stuff, and ordaining all kinds of vestments and holy oil and all this kind of all that kind of thing at that time. So that's when, well, the church as we know it today got started, and that does cost money. And so if that's that has to be paid for. But the one thing you remember that it's don't take a guilt trip saying that that the 10% has to be
Yeah,
paid.
because we see a lot of pastors do this, right? They say you have to give 10% in a way to force people to give them more money, which we is not a part of the Bible. But we do see things in the Bible, Harry, where it says they put aside money on the first day of the week, right? So how does that imply? What was that used for then?
Yeah, and Paul did that. He says on the first day of the week, set some money aside, so when I get there, we don't have to collect. And Paul says, I'm heading to Jerusalem, and the folks there are hurting. They actually the gospel started there, and so we those people really need your financial help because they're in a bad way. There's hunger there, and so on. So
So it was more for the poor people rather
thank you.
than.
All for the poor. Everything in the New Testament we read is taking care of the poor. And then when you read James 1, verse 27, James says the true religion is to take care of widows and orphans and their distress and to walk
Mm,
unblemished with God. And, so what about adopting a few kids or bringing some seniors into your home? That is true charity if we want to look at, okay, what does charity look like? And so there's also some pastors that suggest the more you give, the more God blesses you. You can't outgive God. But that's your thoughts on that.
I think we should just be skeptical when we hear that stuff, right? Because we know to not put the Lord our God to the test and be wise with your money, right? In the aspect, we're not saying by any stretch of the imagination don't give, but there's
Yeah,
good causes to give to people. And sometimes, like you're saying, adopting kids, taking care of the elder, which James literally says is pure religion. Or, you see somebody hurting, a brother or
yeah,
sister in the community hurting. I would
for
personally way
sure.
rather give it to that person than than support than another place that is more
Well,
irresponsible.
right. And we have to make sure that we don't support fools that just throw away their money. I mean, there's lots of that happening, and we got to be careful about that. Frauds, charity scams. We have to be careful about that. Like just because somebody's asking for money, that doesn't mean that we have to do that. And the term tithing is 10%, and I believe that's legalism. That's not what Jesus was talking about. Is just having a heart that goes out to others, helping others, thinking of others. Yeah, by all means, that is who we are. We're our brother's keeper. We need to be caring about that. But the gospel itself, freely have received, freely give. Make sure that we also do that part and bring. It's sort of like we talk about bringing poor people into our home, but we also need to spiritually bring poor people into our home too.
Amen.
Share the faith and bring somebody home for supper spiritually. Yeah, that's the more important thing.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thanks a lot for this, Harry.
Thank you.